Hello, and welcome to this presentation where we're going to talk through some of the structures of the degrees here at Bristol and some of the options on offer. My name's Dr. Annika Johnson. I'm one of the lecturers here in economics, and in this video we're going to focus on our single honours and very economics heavy programmes that we have here at Bristol. So we're going to talk about economics, economics and econometrics, economics and finance, and economics and maths. If you're studying on our joint programme, then you might want to check out our companion video, which focuses on our joint programmes with philosophy, politics, accounting, management, and so on. But in this video, I'll start by talking about the structure of these 4 degrees over the 3 years of your programme, and then later I'll tell you a little bit more about how they're taught and assessed and give you some idea of the optional units. So here's most of our degree programmes, all nicely summarised on one page. Along the top there you can see the various single and joint honours programmes that we offer, and along the shorter side you can see how they differ and progress as you go through the degree. There's a lot of information here though, so for a moment let's focus on BSc Economics. This is probably our biggest programme, and then later on we'll see how the other programmes differ slightly from this structure. But let's start by looking at what happens in year 1 of this degree. So the purpose of the first year is to make sure that you have a really solid foundation and all the key skills. You'll spend roughly a third of your time in your first year studying economic theory, so that's sort of otherwise known as microeconomics and macroeconomics. And also a course on handling data and some programming on how to visualise it. You'll also take 2 maths-based units. And in these you'll use some tools that you're probably really familiar with, like calculus, probability and statistics, but also some that you're less familiar with, such as econometrics. Econometrics are the tools that economists use to analyse data. If you don't know what it is, then you might want to check out our sample lecture, which will give you some idea of what economists try to do with numbers and data. If you've watched any of our other presentations, though, then you'll know that econometrics is a very big part of Bristol economics. And that's really because it's one of the most valuable skills for a modern economist to have. And so we carry that through into year 2. So in year 2, you'll continue to study econometrics for a full third of your degree, and also move on to some higher level topics in micro and macro. The remainder of the year in BSc Economics, at least, is made up from optional units, so you get a little bit more choice about what you do. And then we see that as you move to your third year, you get a lot more choice indeed. So most of our third year students will choose to complete a dissertation, or applied economics project as it's known, and that's where you get to put all the econometrics that you've learned into practice and research an area that you're particularly interested in. It's worth saying, though, that on this programme, if you know that coursework really isn't for you, then on BSc Economics at least, you can replace this with some advanced theory units, or combine that with an applied unit in current economic problems as an alternative. The rest of your third year is really up to you. You can choose from a wide range of economics options, so choices such as environmental economics or behavioural economics have been very popular in the past. And there's also options available from management and accounting and finance, but I'll give you more on this in the last section of this video. Okay, so that's BSc Economics. You can see that as you build competency in all the core skills and units, then you get more and more choice as you go through the degree. Some of the other programmes are very similar to this. So if we start by looking at, for example, economics and econometrics, then we can see that these 2 degrees are very similar up until the third year. So in the third year in economics and econometrics, you have to do this dissertation, but then you also take some more advanced econometric theory units. Economics and finance is also very similar to economics. The difference is that your options are really all allocated to finance modules. So if you know that finance is already something you're really interested in, this is probably something that will work really well for you. But if you're not sure yet and you want to retain some options, then BSc Economics will allow you more flexibility through the degree. In the third year of Economics and Finance, that applied economics project, the dissertation, is also compulsory. We then also have a number of joint programmes, most of which you can learn about in the joint programs video, if that's what you're interested in. For a moment, though, I'm just going to talk about BSc Economics and Maths. So, largely speaking, the economics units and econometrics units that you take on BSc Economics and Maths will be similar to BSc Economics. The difference is that most of your options are allocated to maths units. And so in the first year, for instance, you take more maths and you'll take probability and stats with the maths department rather than with the economics department. In year 2, you then take econometrics with the economics department, and you can then take the remainder of your year, other than micro and macro, from the maths optional units. Or perhaps econometrics too, if that's what you're really interested in with economics. And then in the final year of economics and maths, your options are normally split 50-50. So you'll take 50% of the optional units from economics, and 50% of the optional units, your optional units at least, will be chosen from the maths list. So there's lots of economics in all of these degrees. All the economics programs at Bristol are quite technical, so being good at maths and liking maths is quite important. The difference between BSc Economics and Maths and BSc Economics is really on the type of maths that you're doing. So if what you like is looking at numbers, using data, manipulating it, modelling it, and so on, then BSc Economics is going to do all of that for you. If what you like is really based in sort of number theory and proofs, for example, then BSc Economics and Maths does more of that. So it really just depends on the type of maths that you're really interested in. Okay, and then as I say, if you want to know more about the other joint programs, then you can check out our video on that. But for now, that's the broad degree structure. So now I think we should talk a little bit about teaching and assessment and think about how this degree is delivered. So this is another example. I'm using BSc Economics again. So on your degree, you're asked to take 120 credit points per year. So what that means in normal language is you're going to take roughly 6 units, normally split as sort of 3 per term. And a unit, so for example, is Introductory Econometrics or Economic Data, and it's typically taught through a combination of lectures and small group classes, with roughly 2 to 4 hours of lectures plus an hour's small group class each week. Not all units are the same though, so obviously units such as the dissertation are quite different and would involve a lot more small group and one-to-one contact, for example. Compare that to a first year core theory unit where you might have many more lecture hours. So the teaching is always tailored to be best suited to the type of thing you're trying to learn in the unit that's being delivered. Assessment is largely done through exams, but there's also some coursework. And there are some optional units which are more coursework heavy than others. So if you want to, you can choose options which are more coursework heavy if that's what you want to do, or exam heavy if that's what you prefer. But if all that's not enough to keep you busy, then there's also lots of other sessions and support available to you. So every lecturer and every class tutor, anyone that teaches you, will hold weekly office hours. And that's time when you can go and ask them questions about things that you want to know more about, or things where you're struggling and want to know how to catch up. But you'll also find other things like revision sessions take place at strategic points throughout the year. We have a student seminar series, which is quite regular with various visiting speakers. We have employability sessions and so on. And then, of course, there's all the clubs and society activity that you might choose to do as well. So there's really no need to worry here about having too much time on your hands. There's definitely more than enough here to keep you very busy. Okay, let's finally talk about those options. So there's a number of optional units available, particularly in the final year of your degree. A large number of those options will come from economics, and that's what you can see here on the left-hand side. I should say that this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. It's just some examples of what's been available before. But there's also some opportunity to choose from our sort of sister disciplines in management and accounting and finance as well. And so those are some examples of the management and accounting and finance units, though again, the list is much, much bigger. And if you have optional units in your first and second year, then there's also a chance to take open units from other departments across the university from outside economics, accounting and finance and management. If that's not enough for you, then there are also many other opportunities you can pursue during your time at Bristol. Most of our programmes, apart from economics and maths, offer a study abroad year with destinations all over the world. Or if you want an experience but don't want to take the whole year to do it, then there's also a number of shorter summer programmes available, such as the International Leadership Programme. But if any of these opportunities sound interesting to you, then I recommend you take a look at the Global Opportunities website. That's the address up there in the top right-hand corner. Closer to home, there's also the Professional Liaison Network to help you learn more about the working world and economics and industry through things such as the mentoring scheme, insight talks and internships. If you want to know more about this, then I suggest checking out our video on why economics and our presentation there on employability. And then finally, there's many other events and activities to explore in the department. So the EFM Society is the largest student society in the university, and they can do a lot, for example, to help you settle into university life and link you up with senior students. So one of the things they do, for example, is if you like sport but don't want to play at the ultra-competitive levels, then they've got many teams which compete in the more relaxed intramural leagues that take place between different subjects or residential halls and so on. The department also runs lots of events, so things like film nights with guest speakers where we discuss the economics issues that come up in the films, and then there's plenty of support for you to access from your personal tutor, the wellbeing team, and so on. There's really a lot of people here who want to make sure this is a great experience for you and work hard to provide lots of opportunities. So really all you have to do is go out there and take the ones that you're most interested in. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you found that useful. Make sure you check out the rest of our Visit Day website for more videos and information and everything economics at Bristol. Thanks for watching.